Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda and welcome to this important episode of Ignition Time, everyone. Folks, this morning I covered an important letter from 10 Republican senators that was sent to President Biden seeking a meeting, proposing a counteroffer, if you will. This counteroffer, and this was reported by Jeff Stein from the Washington Post, was in the $600 billion range, which would include more targeted stimulus checks, potentially in the range of $1,000 potentially to lower income individuals. The current proposal, the American Rescue Plan, the current proposal from President Biden recommends $1,400 stimulus checks based on the same guidelines as the previous threshold, which was the threshold for the CARES Act, the $75,000. So, a reminder about the original threshold: if you make less than $75,000, you got the $1,200 earlier this year, and then you got the $600, or you should be getting the $600. I did do another video on our channel, folks, where I highlighted how the government is garnishing stimulus checks, folks. So I definitely recommend that you check that out as well. In fact, I tell you what, let me actually quickly show you our channel so you can see what I'm talking about. In fact, let me switch gears and show you my screen right here. There we go. And let me take myself out so you guys can see the whole screen. I did do another video where I highlighted how the government is silently garnishing stimulus checks. So I strongly recommend you check that out. I did highlight comments from popular Republican Senator Rob Portman, and in fact, today we'll hear from Senator Rob Portman. I highlighted the counteroffer from the 10 Republican senators and what the White House's response was to that letter from those 10 Republican senators. Now, what's super interesting, folks, is that one of those 10 Republican senators is Senator Rob Portman from Ohio. He is not going to be running for re-election, but he's still, I just want to be clear, he's still around for the next 2 years, folks. And he's considered a calm, rational, respectful voice. He's not too far left or too far right. And he's not like some of the crazy, some of the unusual characters that we have. So he's considered a calm and rational voice, and he chimed in today on many important subjects, ranging from his own plans for retirement from the United States Senate. He's going to go into the private sector. He's probably going to make $1 million a year or more in the private sector. That's what a lot of these lawmakers do. And he said, "Hey, I've been in the Senate for 30 years. My plan wasn't to be in the Senate this long." And he did lament the fact that there is a lot of division right now within government between both parties. But I want to highlight some important comments from him as far as stimulus is concerned. As far as his comments on the impeachment trial are concerned, he did say that, look, just because Trump's behavior was inexcusable does not mean he should be convicted. This is a very wide-ranging interview, folks, and I want to welcome you to this important episode of Ignition Time, where we highlight important comments from outgoing Republican Senator from Ohio, Rob Portman. Let's just jump right in, everyone. This is breaking news. This is an interview that just happened this morning. This is breaking news from Ignition Time. I'll show you the interview and I'll break it down for you. So, folks, important comments from Republican Senator from Ohio, who is still around for the next 2 years, but who's not going to be running for re-election, Rob Portman. Let's take a look at some super important comments from Rob Portman this morning, including his response to the to the American Rescue Plan and his two big concerns, folks. He has two big concerns about the American Rescue Plan. His number one biggest concern is that, hey, we just passed $900 billion and money should not be going out to people who don't need it. He said someone making $250,000, $300,000 a year will actually get stimulus money that we don't have, money that is essentially going to further add to our deficit and is going to be paid by future generations. So he said it needs to be more targeted, because right now the way it's set up is that families making hundreds of thousands of dollars will still get more stimulus money. And number two, he said that, hey, there's no need to extend unemployment benefits through September of 2021 because we don't know how the economy will look like in September 2021. Those are his comments, everyone. Let's just jump right in and take a look at what Senator Rob Portman from Ohio said about the American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, everyone. Let's watch together.
And there are too few people who are actively looking for that common ground.
Republican Senator Rob Portman, a longtime member of the House and now Senate, explaining his surprise decision this week to retire after his term ends, leaving a party in chaos after an insurrection on the Capitol, fueled in part by some of his Trump loyalist colleagues. In response to the announcement, a former top aide to Speakers John Boehner and Paul Ryan tweeted, "Congress is no place for a sensible Republican anymore." Ohio Republican Senator Rob Portman joins me now. Thank you so much for joining me. I know you heard my interview with Brian Deese, the president's top economic advisor.
And folks, I did cover that interview in a previous video on our channel where I highlighted what Brian Deese said about the $1.9 trillion stimulus package and the letter, folks, from the 10 Republican senators, including Senator Rob Portman. So let's hear the response to the response right now.
To him about the letter that you and 9 other Republicans sent this morning. What do you think about that? What's your reaction to what he said?
Well, first, thank you for the interview. It's the first time I've heard the administration say they want to actually make good on the promises made in the inaugural address with regard to COVID-19. So you made progress. Thank you. I mean, seriously, it is extraordinary to me that you have a great speech, which I said at the time at the inaugural, talking about the need to heal and the need for us to work together as a country, Republican and Democrat alike, and a pledge to do more outreach to Republicans. And then the next day, landing on our desks, a $1.9 trillion COVID-19 package, when only a month ago we passed a $900 billion COVID-19 package that was entirely bipartisan.
So, folks, right out the gate, some sarcasm from Senator Rob Portman about the I quote, spirit of partisanship from the Biden administration.
This one, nobody was consulted, including the Democrats on our bipartisan group that compiled the previous bill. And, frankly, we haven't gotten much of a response yet until today. So thank you. And it's true that this morning we sent out a letter to the president saying we would love to work with him. It's signed by 10 Republicans. It specifies the proposal that we think is more targeted and more appropriate for the times we're in. And my hope is the president will meet with us and we'll be able to work out something.
And folks, I want to emphasize one more time. If you check out our channel, let me actually show you our channel. I did highlight everyone that letter from those Republicans right here. This is the video, so please check it out. And I did highlight what Brian Deese, the director of the White House Economic Council, has been saying. So I definitely recommend that you folks check that out. Okay, so definitely check that out. And let's come back, everyone, to this rather interesting interview with Senator Rob Portman and see what he had to say specifically about this proposal, everyone. So let's get back to that particular video. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and resume that video where we left off.
Done it 5 times. We've had 5 COVID-19 packages that are entirely bipartisan. Let's do it again, because that's what would be best for the country.
So, Senator, I have the letter here. It does lay out general ideas, some specifics, but not a lot. Can you give us a ballpark of how much you're willing to spend in this whole package you're proposing?
By the way, we know that ballpark is $600 billion. I reported that in a previous video that was reported by Jeff Stein from the Washington Post. 1/3 of what the Biden administration wants. Not likely to fly with the Democrats. But let's hear what Senator Portman says. I did report that it was $600 billion.
Well, it'll be less than 1.9 because much of what the administration has laid out has nothing to do with COVID-19. And in fact, some of it is not even responsive to the issues that Mr. Deese raised. As an example, with regard to the direct payments, we think they should be much more targeted. $50,000 cap for individuals, as an example, $100,000 for a family. And right now, if you look at the administration's plan, you could have a family with 3 kids making almost $300,000 a year getting a check. And many of these people have had no impact from COVID. In fact, some are doing quite well. Others are struggling. Let's focus on those who are struggling. You made the good point a moment ago that all the economic analysis has come in saying that those who make over, let's say, $75,000 a year are tending not to spend the money, but rather save it. In other words, it's not being used for the intended purpose. So let's target it. We really want to help those who need it the most. And at a time of unprecedented deficits and debts, and a debt as a percentage of the economy is as high as it's been in our nation's history since World War II, we need to be sure this is targeted. Second, with regard to unemployment insurance, they have a program that takes it until September. We don't know what the economy is going to look like between now and September. Most economists believe next year will be.
So folks, you heard it right here, right now. You just heard it from Senator Rob Portman from Ohio, basically saying, "Hey, I have two big concerns. One, the stimulus should be more targeted. Okay, and I do have reporting, and again, I'm going to emphasize, they're proposing $600 billion instead of $1.9 trillion. They're proposing $1,000 stimulus checks to lower income individuals. The Biden administration's plan includes $1.9 trillion, not $600 billion, which is more than 3 times what the Republicans' counter offer is. And the Biden administration's plan is $1,400 based on the same income thresholds as the CARES Act and the second plan, the $600 stimulus check plan. So not going to fly probably, but the two big concerns are, one, the stimulus checks, and number two, there's, basically, folks, what Senator Rob Portman is saying is there's no need to extend the unemployment benefits all the way through to September. That's basically what he's saying. Let's pick up where we left off.
Growth, over 4% growth. So let's target that a little bit more and make sure that it is tied somewhat to the economic conditions.
Okay, so those are two examples. You spoke to President Biden on the phone this week. Did you talk about any of this?
Well, I had a very nice call from President Biden regarding my decision not to run again in 2 years, and I appreciated that. I don't talk about what I talked to the president about, but I will say it was a nice conversation. I did raise the issue, but my hope is that, again, the inaugural address will not just be good rhetoric, but actually be practice. And I think it's really in the interest of the Biden administration not to do what the Democrats on the Hill are planning to do, which is on Tuesday, as you know, start to go down the road of a process that will jam Republicans and really jam the country, because with a bare 50-vote majority, remember they have the 50-50 Senate now, so it's divided right in half,
But
that they would use what's called reconciliation, and basically what it says is you ignore the interests of the minority party.
And folks, I have to chime in. Just as Senator Rob Portman was talking about reconciliation, and by the way, I saw this interview live, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. The Republicans used reconciliation to pass the massive tax cuts in 2017, which, by the way, benefited the richest amongst us. Okay, the Republicans did use reconciliation to pass the massive tax cuts, and I want to go back a few years. The Democrats used reconciliation to pass Obamacare. And by the way, the Republicans then tried to use reconciliation to dismantle Obamacare. So when senators like Senator Rob Portman, again, he's considered, fairly balanced. Again, when he brings up reconciliation, there are double standards here. And that's what I was thinking. And what's interesting is that the interviewer actually points that out and says, hey, you're talking about reconciliation, but you've used it in the past to dismantle Obamacare, to try and to successfully pass the 2017 tax cuts. So why are you against it now? And I think his response is, how can I be polite? His response is very theoretical. It's very technical. And to be honest, as a viewer, as a subscriber, you might be like, what are you doing? Are you trying to confuse me? Or are you trying to put me to sleep? Because at the end of the day, he says, hey, reconciliation is about budget practices. And it was, in my opinion, a non-answer. But this next segment is super interesting, everyone, where the Republican senator from Ohio, Rob Portman, is called out on the double standards about reconciliation. You decide whether his answer is a real answer or a non-answer. You be the judge. Let's watch.
True, and it's not in the interest of the party, of the Democratic Party, to do that, in my view, because it will set President Biden down a path of partisanship that I think will poison the well for other bipartisanship we'll need on so many issues.
Well, you mentioned poisoning the well. I just have to ask you, because you did support Republican efforts to use reconciliation on a few things, like trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, passing the Trump tax cuts. So explain why it was okay for Republicans but not Democrats.
Well, reconciliation is a tool that you're able to use. It has to relate directly to the budget. And what the Democrats are talking about doing is, one, using it right off the bat without, trying to come up with a bipartisan compromise as we have on COVID-19. If you can't find bipartisanship on COVID-19, I don't know where you can find it. Our proposal, as an example, is going to have all of the health care funding that President Biden has in his proposal, all of it. So there's a lot of bipartisanship. But second, reconciliation is not meant for the purposes that they're trying to use it for. They would have to get rid of what's called the Byrd Rule, which keeps it to the budget. In other words, everything has to be directly related to the budget.
Folks, at this point, I have a question for you. Do you care about what the Byrd Rule is? Let me know if you care about what the Byrd Rule is. But super interesting answer from the Republican senator as he tries to wiggle out of that one.
And so that would change the rules of the Senate.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be the old reconciliation. It would be a new reconciliation. They've been very clear about that.
Okay.
You know how that works. But this is essentially it's getting rid of the filibuster if you get rid of the Byrd Rule, which is a huge change in our country and will lead to less bipartisanship, not more.
Yeah, and I want our viewers to stay awake while we talk about the inner workings of the Senate. But I do want to move on to impeachment. You voted this week to dismiss the trial as unconstitutional.
And folks, this is where Senator Rob Portman chimes in on the impeachment trial, and he says that this is very interesting what he says, everyone. He says, just because some behavior is inexcusable does not mean that it should be convicted in the Senate. Very interesting comments. Let's take a look at what he says about that particular subject.
Since Donald Trump is no longer in office, I know you've said you're going to keep an open mind as a juror, but setting aside questions of timing or constitutionality, do you consider Trump's actions leading up to and on January 6th to be impeachable conduct? Yes or no?
Yeah. First of all, Dana, that was not the vote. I mean, the vote was to table a discussion about the constitutionality.
Right.
And I've said
so
from the
separate.
start, I
so
think
separate
this is
from
an issue
that.
that has to be discussed.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put that aside, but I want to focus.
The vote was not about dismissing the trial. It was about not discussing the constitutionality, which is a critical issue. I have said with regard to the president's comments that day that they were partly responsible for what happened, for the horrible violence that occurred on Capitol Hill. I've also said, that what he did was wrong and inexcusable. I've used the word inexcusable because I think that's how I feel. So, I mean, we'll see. I'm a juror. I'm going to keep an open mind as we go through this. But I do think that this constitutionality issue has to be addressed. I mean, we would be convicting a private citizen, as you know, someone who's out of office. That sets
So, folks, listen closely to what Rob Portman is saying, and he is echoing what's going on in the Republican Party, okay? What he is saying is that the behavior was inexcusable, but the constitutional issue, whether the trial itself is constitutional, needs to be addressed. He also says that he does not think there'll be an acquittal, although he did speak for himself when he said that I'm going to be listening as an impartial juror. But he does say something that's fairly significant. He's about to say that. He says just because it's inexcusable does not mean there should be a conviction in the Senate. In other words, the United States Senate is going to find another way to try and hold the persons and or person accountable. That is what he is about to say. Very interesting comments, everyone, as the Senate juggles what can best be considered as the most difficult balancing act they've ever done, ever. We've never had a president who's been impeached twice in the House of Representatives. Okay, there have been 4 instances of impeachment in the history of the United States of America in the House of Representatives. Once for Donald Trump in 2020, the second time for Donald Trump in 2019, the third time for Bill Clinton in 1998, and the fourth time going way back for another president that you probably haven't heard of. So this would be the first time that a president would be convicted in the Senate if it happens, but it looks like that's not likely to happen. Let's hear what Portman says.
And I think all former presidents, those alive and those not, could be affected in a negative way.
But if you don't vote yes, aren't you excusing it? You say it's inexcusable. If you don't vote yes, one could argue that you are doing just that. You are excusing the behavior.
Well, it can be inexcusable and yet not be subject to a conviction after a president has left office. If you look at the Constitution, and there aren't that many words about impeachment, so it's easy to do, and I encourage your viewers to do so. It's always connected with removal from office. And this is why the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court refuses to come and preside over this trial, as he did in the last one, because he says, as he looks at the Constitution, he only comes when it's about removal, which is what impeachment calls for. So I think it's a question we have to discuss, and we have to come up with a precedent for the future.
Okay, so I'm sure you've seen the news that.
Folks, that was important. He said it's an issue we have to discuss and come up with a precedent for the future. So it means the Senate is going to try and find some way to make the person and or persons accountable. Oh, before I forget, folks, before I forget, the entire Trump legal team quit today. So as of this morning, the entire Trump legal team, yesterday some Trump legal team members had quit, but the entire Trump legal team quit this morning. So Trump, at this moment in time, doesn't have any lawyers for the impeachment, which is about to begin in a few days. Just thought I would throw that out there in case you wanted to hear about some more unusual news going into the new year, folks.
CNN broke last night all 5 members of former President Trump's impeachment team quit. And there's just a week until this trial begins. CNN's reporting is that they left amid a disagreement over strategy because Trump wanted them to argue the election was stolen. What does that say to you about the former president, that he's still trying to perpetuate the lie, the very lie that led to the insurrection in the first place?
Well, let me just say clearly, and I've said this, as you know, since November, which is that there was not adequate irregularities or fraud, not widespread enough to change the result of the election, period. That's my view. It's the view, by the way, of the Trump Department, of the Trump Justice Department. Bill Barr said that before he left office. And so I think we need to be very clear with the American people. Those who voted for Donald Trump, and I, was a Trump supporter, and I think his policies were better for the country and better for my state. We have to acknowledge that this election was lost, and we have to move on. And Joe Biden is now the duly elected president of the United States. So if the argument is not going to be made on issues like constitutionality, which are real issues and need to be addressed, I think it will not benefit the president.
You are now the 3rd Senate Republican planning to retire after 2022, along with Richard Burr and Pat Toomey. Your party is facing a reckoning right now. People who are telling lies, like you were just talking about, pushing conspiracy theories, they're getting louder and louder. So isn't your silence, or eventually your absence from the party, from someone like you, going to make the party veer even more towards people who spew conspiracies and lies?
Well, I don't plan to be silent. First of all, I've been doing this a long time, as you know, and you and I have known each other a long time, 30 years off and on, and I never intended to stay as long as I have, to be honest. I'm not big on career politicians. I think it's good to go in and out of office. So I'm looking forward to getting back to the private sector and the nonprofit sector and helping more on the outside. But I don't plan to be silent, and I do think, we have a good chance as a Republican Party to pull together and to do what we did in 2020, with the exception of the presidential race. Republicans did very well, gained 14, maybe 15 seats in the House of Representatives, which no one expected, did very well in the Senate seats compared to what was expected, took over 3 new state houses, and in Ohio particularly, we did very well. So I think the Republican Party is on sound footing if we focus on the policies, because people trust us there, and we have the right policies in terms of economic growth and strong military and energy independence and so on. So that's where the party ought to focus.
Okay, so having said that, I want to ask about Liz Cheney. You have been very close with the Cheney family for decades. Right now, Republicans are not focused entirely on the policies. People like former President Trump, some of Liz Cheney's colleagues, are trying to punish her for voting to impeach President
Trump. And folks, before I talk about, before we hear the response from Rob Portman about Liz Cheney, I do want to highlight that I did do another video, folks, on our channel. Let me actually show you our channel. I did do another video. And if you take a look at this video right here, Meet the New Trump 2.0, I did, folks, highlight what is going on in Wyoming. There's a lot of resistance against the most powerful Republican Congresswoman in the House of Representatives, Liz Cheney. And she did speak out strongly against Trump, and she did vote for the impeachment of Trump in the House proceedings. And so there's been a lot of backlash against her. In fact, the 38-year-old Republican congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz, actually went to Wyoming and conducted, spoke to the people, and quite an interesting segment, a wild day with Congressman Matt Gaetz, 38-year-old Republican from Florida who went to Wyoming. I believe he's going to be the next Trump 2.0. I believe he's going to be Trump 2.0. This is the new version of the Republican Party, if you will, or at least certain parts of the Republican Party. So definitely check out that video. because there's really some interesting factions within the Republican Party emerging as we speak. Let's get back to this segment
And there are too
hear.
few people who are actively.
One moment. Let's get back to this segment and hear what Rob Portman had to say about the backlash, folks, against Liz Cheney. Okay, so let me know what you think.
Footing if we focus on the policies, because people trust us there, and we have the right policies in terms of economic growth and strong military and energy independence and so on. So that's where the party ought to focus.
Okay, so having said that, I want to ask about Liz Cheney. You have been very close with the Cheney family for decades. Right now, Republicans are not focused entirely on the policies. People like former President Trump, some of Liz Cheney's colleagues, are trying to punish her for voting to impeach President Trump. How do you respond to that?
Well, she is a friend. I'm biased. I think she's very smart, and she plays a key role in our party, particularly on foreign affairs. So I would hope that they would not go down that road. I think it's important to have her voice in the process. And, you know, my sense is that she has a lot of support in the Republican conference. I'm in the Senate, not the House, and House members, as I used to be, hate to have the senators tell them what to do. But the truth is, I think she's very valuable for the team and a great leader.
So I know you're in the Senate, not the House. You were in the House for a long time. This isn't about telling them what to do. This is a question about, I think, right and wrong. And this is about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, as you know, believes the dangerous QAnon conspiracy theories. She spread anti-Semitic conspiracies, claimed school shootings are false flag operations, and so on. She has so far faced zero repercussions from what she has said and the ideas that she is spewing. So as a Republican leader who does not want to be silent, do you think that she should be punished, or somehow it should be shown that she is an example of how that kind of stuff is not tolerated in the GOP?
Yeah, I think Republican leaders ought to stand up and say it is totally unacceptable what she has said. I saw a couple of the videos over the weekend, and one had to do with violence, as I see it. And there's no place for violence in our political dialogue. By the way, there's no place for violence in our country. I mean, this is something that we got to get away from. So yeah, I think people ought to speak out clearly.
Should she be stripped of her committee assignment?
Leaders, but I assume that's something that they're looking at, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And I think that's the way to send a message. The voters who elected her in her district in Georgia, ought to be respected. On the other hand, when that kind of behavior occurs, there has to be a strong response.
Senator Rob Portman, a lot to get through, which we did.
Oh boy, folks, what an interview. Super interesting comment from C. Miller. Let's put that up here. Since Sidney Powell has dropped her election fraud cases, maybe Trump will bring her back and her 90s cheetah sweater. Super interesting comments. Folks, I tell you what, this was a wide-ranging interview. And by the way, folks, I just want to be clear. What we heard was the opinion of the, I guess you could say, the centrist Republicans, or the not far right Republicans, because Rob Portman is indicative of a large portion of the senior Republican establishment. But there are new characters in the Republican Party, like Matt Gaetz, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, that have a different point of view, and they're very Trump-like. They have a very different point of view, a very different vision. I believe that wherever the Republican Party ends up, is it going to end up, more center-right, or is it going to end up more far-right, is something that we'll know in the next few months, because I believe that the Republican Party itself is going through some sort of a fundamental reckoning, and a huge portion of that reckoning has to do with the role, the future role of Trump, because the Trump 2.0s, like Matt Gaetz and other individuals, are the rather interesting, in my opinion, extremely bizarre individuals like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's see whether they gain traction within the party. I don't know. We'll find out. I'll definitely keep you posted as things go along. But again, this tells us that the Republicans want targeted stimulus. This tells us that the Republicans do not want an extension of unemployment benefits all the way up to September. The Republicans, as far as Portman is concerned, do want to be impartial jurors and do want to hold former President Trump accountable in some way, shape, or form. And they do also want to see some sort of accountability for some individuals who say some rather interesting things, while at the same time calling for bipartisanship and calling out what they consider President Biden's two-faced tactics, which is basically what Rob Portman started the interview with. Go back and watch the start of the video if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Basically, Rob Portman says, "Hey, President Biden says bipartisanship. Next thing you know, we get a $1.9 trillion proposal." And I can confirm to you right now that the White House is not going to take the smaller proposal from the 10 Republican senators seriously. No way, no way. It's going to be something that is going to be, never looked at again. It's going to be put on a table, and that's going to be the end of that. And I believe that every day that goes by, we're heading towards reconciliation. Because if anything, this letter will tell the Biden team that the pressure campaign we are creating is working, but it's not moving the needle enough. So let's just pass $1.9 trillion with reconciliation. And the guy who wants to do that more than anyone is Bernie Sanders. So that's where things stand, everyone. I appreciate you watching. And what an interesting situation we find ourselves in, everyone. I appreciate you all. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next episode of Ignition Time. I will talk to you about a Democrat lashing out at his own party about the approach towards a $1.9 trillion stimulus. Yep. The world continues to get a little bit more strange every single day as we make our way through 2021, and I'll try and help you make sense of it. I'll leave you with some interesting trivia and some custom music created specifically for our channel. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday.